Welcome to today's catalog of beginner to intermediate calisthenics exercises for people who are either just starting out or want to advance their calisthenics routine to become faster, stronger, better, and more in control of their entire body. We will go through the most important exercises, add progressions to all of these, and maybe even add some truly advanced exercises for those of you who really want to take it a step further. So if you're ready, let's go and have some fun. Exercise number one, hanging. When it comes to hanging, we will differentiate between two different types. Number one, the passive decompressive hang, lengthening and decompressing every single joint, vertebrae and muscle in our entire body by relaxing into the position. Number two, the active hang, doing the exact opposite by shortening our arms, pulling our shoulder blades into scapular depression and adduction and holding like so. And the second really important variation for the active hang, an active hollow body hold where we are flexing our entire anterior chain to strengthen our core in conjunction with our arm, hip flexor, and basically leg musculature in general. These three will make up your foundation of bar-related exercises. This moves us to extended arm support positions, starting out with a classic extended arm support position in a plank, an upright extended arm support position on dip bars, an overhead extended arm support position for all kinds of handstand training, with our top level being an extended arm support position on either T-Rex bands or gymnastic rings for maximum stabilization and activation of all those small muscles necessary to stabilize your body in unstable circumstances. Leading us to what is probably the most neglected part of calisthenics training in general, lower body or leg musculature. With foundational exercise number one being able to stand on one foot for at the very least a full minute. If you notice that you are imbalanced when you're doing this, then you need to work on this a little bit more. Number two, extended in both legs, a 90-degree angle to our hips, meaning we need a lot of posterior chain flexibility with a lot of anterior chain strength, especially when it comes to static strength for all the longer holds we will be doing later, and for all the flexibility and control parts we're going to need in our leg musculature. And finally, a horse stance with both feet flat on the ground and our hip joints at the very same height as our knee joints, as well as balancing the same exact position on our tiptoes to have as much calf muscle and foot musculature inclusion as we can, as well as core inclusion and stabilizer musculature. All of this will help us build the base we're going to need for instance exercises like the pistol squat. Having learned, played around and mastered these foundational skills, we can move up the ladder to something a little bit more advanced in the medium or beginner to medium category. Having mostly worked on both extended as well as support positions, now we can start bending our joints. With the push-up being our first exercise, and we have a lot of variations for this one, so let's go through a rapid fire session of different push-up progressions. Classic pectoral and triceps dominant push-ups, elbows flared slightly outwards, and you can turn your hands out if you're having problems with wrist pain. Tucking our arms in for more triceps dominant push-ups, with the same going for diamond push-ups, which are also very triceps dominant. Adding lateral movements for insane pectoral dominance, as well as adding even biceps inclusion for push-up exercises. The same going for the archer, one arm fully extended, and the typewriter, starting out low to the ground and moving as slowly as possible from one side laterally to the other. And adding triceps extension simulations for good measure. And this way we have built a nice foundation for all kinds of push-up exercises. And while we are still talking pectoral and triceps dominance, we will add a classic dip exercise as another foundational skill, changing from the extended support position to bending in our elbows, just as we did with the push-up variations. Moving us to what is probably most people's favorite, including my own, the different pull-up variations from the foundational pull-ups to some of the really advanced ones. With your first order of business being the symmetrical scapular pull-up, Changing your scapular positioning from elevation and abduction to depression and adduction as symmetrically as you can, and going through as long a range of motion as you can. Of course, moves us to asymmetrical scapular pull-ups. Before we learn these two, we are not allowed to advance to actual pull-up work, because mastering these two will make every single pull-up exercise you do after that much easier. Moving us to the easiest variation of pull-ups or chin-ups, the underhand close grip for biceps dominant pulls, and the wide grip overhand latissimus dominant grip for classic pull-ups. Moving us to some of the more advanced and more fun variations with a mixed over underhand grip for asymmetrical movements, and of course switching that one around to work out any imbalances we might have. The archer pull-up for way more one-sided latissimus and biceps dominance, as well as the typewriter for adding more lateral movements, which are going to put a lot of pressure on our shoulders and our arm musculature, as well as adding a lot of control requirements for this exercise, making it one of the more advanced variations. And putting all of the pull-up variations together into one singular movement, going through one complete rotational or circular movements to add all the asymmetrical pulls, the lateral moves, the scapular positioning, and basically everything we did with all the variations before this one. Now, before we can move away from the bar, we have to work on our lever fundamentals, which will be number one, the tucked front lever as a foundation for the complete front lever later. As for the foundation for the back lever, we're going to require a medium level exercise before we can truly get into that. We've said medium level exercise being skin the cat, basically hanging ourselves into this decompressive chest and shoulder opener. Once we are there, now we can start working on our back lever fundamentals. And that would be, of course, a back lever, also tucked in, basically the same as the front lever, just as a back lever foundation. Starting in the skin the cat position, we're gonna pull our knees in, and we're gonna use our scapular, shoulder, and back musculature to get into that back lever tuck hold. When it comes to our legs, a must-learn skill will be the ATG squat, going all the way down into a complete deep squat with both of our feet fully flat on the floor and being able to reverse the entire movement like it is absolutely nothing. And only then can we advance to some of the more interesting, more advanced or medium level exercises, which will mostly be focusing on unilateral movements. The front lunge with your knee all the way down to the floor, the backwards lunge, adding more stabilization and more flexibility for our hip flexors as well. Elevated front lunges for an increased range of motion requiring more strength and more balance. Elevated backwards lunges for the exact same benefits of longer ranges of motion requiring more balance, more stabilization, and more strength. Then we can easily move on to the Bulgarian split squat, the elevated Bulgarian split squat for even more range of motion, even more stabilization, strength, and flexibility bonuses. So we can hit those fast twitch muscle fibers just as much as we hit the slow twitch ones. Classic symmetrical box jumps, as well as classic one-sided box jumps for even more explosiveness and even more strength in our legs. And starting our pistol squat progression on an elevation, so we need less strength in our hip flexors, less flexibility in our posterior chain, and we can focus on building the necessary stabilization and form. With the same going for the dragon squat, which is going to require even more stabilization, even more flexibility and control over our leg musculature, building immense strength. And then we can take that exercise to the mat with a starting position, both legs fully extended and upper body fully upright. Pull your leg in, get into that pistol squat and sit back down. Just be sure not to cheat. The starting position for a pistol squat is not this one, but this one. The hardest part of the pistol squat, which is the switch between seated and elevated, because this is the movement that is truly going to help us build control as well as strength and flexibility. This moves us to the more advanced arm and shoulder support exercises. Starting with a fully extended handstand on the wall. We're gonna take all the focus off the balancing part so we can work on the strength and strength endurance part as well as the control. Number 2, an open sway, switching most of our weight from one arm to the other to prepare us for the next level. Slow and controlled shoulder taps. Right hand to the left hand to the right shoulder, and switching it up very carefully in a very controlled fashion, but staying dynamic instead of taking breaks in between the movements. And finally, for good measure, a complete body mobility drill that is gonna include every single muscle and joint in your entire body, so we can work on our flexibility as well, which is very important when it comes to calisthenics in general, to get rid of some of the injury risk as well as increase our quality of life overall. Starting in a deep squat position with step number 1 being internal hip rotations. Moving to step number 2, combining internal with external hip rotations for a 90-90 squat seated switch. And level number 3, including complete spinal rotation by turning our body and moving our face all the way down to the ground. Now we've basically worked on our entire body mobility, even though we haven't added like hamstring stretches. We are basically working all of our joints as well as all of our muscles. So if you add something like a standing posterior chain stretch, you'll basically now hit every single muscle when it comes to flexibility as well. And there you have it. Those are basically going to be your first 1 or 2 years when it comes to calisthenics in general. You can start out with the easiest exercises. If you are a little bit more advanced, just choose the ones that are on your level, add them to your own training repertoire and start learning them and master them and advance together with us. I'm very sure no matter what level you are at, you're definitely going to find at least a handful of exercises in all of these progressions that are perfect for you and that are going to help you get better. But with that said, once again, sadly, that's all the time I have left for you today. However, guys, if you like the video and subscribe, and please check out other videos on this channel because we literally have new ones every single day, which means that I will see you guys tomorrow. Captain Cairo, peace out.